Come in. Oh. No, let me. Hey, you know what? Let me see. It's you go to the RTA. You go to the agenda is 2020, and then go agenda and pick the board one.
Like Councilman Geislinger's cat is supporting him, my dog is supporting not me. He's stressed about all of these meetings.
I couldn't believe that my cat, who has ignored me all day, decided to come and join the meeting. It was like,
Yeah, it's what are you doing, Daddy?
Jealousy, I think.
oh, I think so.
Tech support.
Or moral support.
That would mean cats have morals.
Oh, oh.
All right, can everybody hear me, Rick?
Yes, I'm seeing at least a quorum. At some point, we need to take roll.
Okay, is David on after we just logged off?
I am. Thank you.
Okay. All righty, do we want to wait a minute or we want to start the roll call?
1 minute, I'd suggest, please.
Okay, yeah, because I need to do something real quick. 1 minute.
Holly.
Holly.
Okay, we waiting on anybody else, Rick?
Not that I know of.
Okay, I had to warm up my coffee, so I'm good. I'm ready now.
Hmm.
Okay, let me get on the right page here.
I know that the other Williams is in the building, so I don't know what, he'll be here.
Okay, all right, we'll get started, and maybe he'll be here by the time we finish the call. So I'm going to start the PPRTA Board of Directors special meeting agenda. So item 1 is the call to order, establish a quorum. So if we can do a roll call.
All right, I'll go ahead and go through the list of board members, and I'm going to name off everybody that I saw, and then afterwards, if you let me know if I didn't catch you. So Director Holly Williams, Director Gonzalez, Director John Graham. We hear Wayne Williams is coming. Director Geislinger, Director Avila, Director Jane Newberry, Ms. Jennifer Ivey, Mr. Andrew Gunning, staff of member governments and citizens. Is there anybody I missed? Rick and Beth, got you both as well. Anybody else? All right, with that, I'll just request that you state your name when making a motion so that we can capture it clearly, and then be very descriptive when presenting, because we do have people on the line that may be only on by phone and not necessarily using the screen portion. Thanks.
Okay, and I do see the other Director Williams as well. All right, so we have a quorum. Let's see, item 2, approval of the agenda. Has everybody had time to review the agenda? And if so, and nobody has any issues, if we could have a motion to approve.
Director Holly Williams, move approval.
John Graham, Manitou Springs, second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. All right, that passes. Item 3, public comment period for items not on the agenda. Do we have anybody calling in? The staff, have we had anybody email or any comments?
No comments were received by email.
Okay. All righty then. So let us move to item 4, approval of the minutes from the August special meeting. Has everybody had time to review the minutes and have any changes, or whether you would like to make a motion to approve?
I would move approval of the minutes for the August special meeting. Holly Williams, Director.
Okay, I have a motion. Anybody want a second?
I'll second John Graham.
Okay, have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed say nay. Okay, that passes. Item 5, Citizen Advisory Committee monthly report. Jim, are you there?
I'm here. Good afternoon. It's Jim Godfrey, Chair of the CAC. During our meeting last week, the City of Colorado Springs brought forth some line item transfers. And after discussion of the rationale and all the discussion about the projects and the rationale and everything, we, the CAC, make a recommendation to the board that we approve the city's request for line item transfers. The city also brought forward 7 contracts and 1 informational item. After a good discussion on some questions, the CAC also recommends that the board approve the city's requested contracts. The county also—
1 minute, please. I just got a text. Can somebody email Commissioner Waller?
Come on, I got it. I figured it out.
Sorry about that. Okay. Continue, Jim.
Okay. The county brought forward a request for contracts as well for some work they're doing out in the Falcon area. And Ultimately, after a good discussion and answer period, the CAC recommends approval of the contract for the county as well. The only other recommendation item goes to the ongoing discussion with PPRTA 3 discussion between the board and the CAC. And the CAC unanimously thinks, especially after discussion with the board last month, that 2022 is the best year to go forward with RTA 3 ballot question. The other question that we did take a vote on, we had another long discussion on the AB list. It was a good discussion about merits of several different options of AB list, independent by member government, alphabetized, prioritized 1 to X, single A list, no B. So we had all these discussions, and the consensus was that the CAC would recommend an alphabetized AB list, very similar to what we have now. There was 1 dissenting vote on that. And part of that discussion generated, Jennifer Irvin requested that she would like to talk with the city staff and any other member government staffs about wording and things of moving projects from the A to B list independently versus like we have it now, where all A's by all member governments must be funded. They want to make sure that we don't take away engineering flexibility and the ability for municipalities should funding become available or something happen in zoning or a developer interest or whatever. They want to make sure that if we're going to change language that would allow member governments to independently move something from a B list to an A list or whatever, that that they have some input into that wording so they maintain their flexibility. And then on the B list, if there were a decision or a request to move an item up from the B list to the A list prior to all A list items being funded, that there's a clear criteria and a process for that to happen. There is a precedent. We have done that already. If we're going to codify that in ballot language or IGAs, we want to make sure that that process is clear and not encumbering, that would prohibit someone from doing something that makes perfectly good sense. So that was kind of our discussion there on that discussion. We'll continue the process. Rick and I agreed to forward the current version of the IGAs and the ballot language to the members of the CAC so they have that. Our direction was to, I want them to become familiar with the wording in that. We had couched our whole discussion on the premise that you as the board would like for us to open up the books, that we want to look at things that work, things that don't work, things that we can improve. And just because we've had something in existence for 20 years, what's changed? Has the mood in the community changed? Are there some political considerations that would drive a change? And those kinds of things. And so in order to have that discussion, we felt like that they needed to have what the status quo is. So that was forwarded to all the CAC members, and we'll pick up that discussion next month. And I'm open to any questions. Rick, did I cover everything properly?
Yes, very good.
All
Commissioner
right, any
Gonzalez.
questions for Jim?
Commissioner Gonzalez, this is Dave. Jim, I should have asked this at the prep meeting, and I apologize. One of the things that we talked about is at some point, it may be a good idea to have a CAC board meeting to talk about this. Has there been any movement towards that? Do you think it's premature? Is there still enough? It sounds like there's still enough stuff that CAC is going through that we don't need to anticipate a board meeting or a joint meeting, or is that something that we should be looking at sometime in the next couple of months, or if that all makes sense?
The answer to should we have one, yes, we all felt like that would be a meaningful discussion. And to the timing of that, I think maybe if we got into a couple of more issues, still some things on our mind that we battered around but didn't get into an in-depth discussion this month on was when a member joins, if they join during the ballot measure, whether it's a concurrent decision on the ballot and they come in with full membership, in other words, they get capital and maintenance and all that. But what happens if they come in off cycle? We're not sure how that would work. If they didn't make it onto the 22 ballot, but later wanted to join, was there room for language in the state wording or in our IGAs or whatever? So we hadn't gotten to that discussion. Still unknown on how that would work from our perspective. So we can't really make a recommendation to you on that yet. But I tried to focus discussion. It's like herding cats. Everybody wants to talk about the whole list of issues. And I did a very poor job of managing this discussion and was very disappointed in myself. But I will try to be more focused next meeting, and we'll narrow down a couple of issues and try to hammer down a few more and get some information back to you next month. But we agree we should have a meeting. I'm just not sure that in the next month or so would be the right, but certainly near the end of the year will probably be a good time.
Thanks. And Rick, if you could just put that as a tickler to look at.
Sure.
Thanks.
Yeah, my tentative vision, without too many specifics, would be October and November would be independent CAC and board meetings, and then December, January. I think the joint meetings will need 2 of them because we'll need. There's probably going to be a need for some research, but so October, November separate, December, January joint is my tentative vision.
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments for Jim or questions?
Yeah, I do. First of all, Jim, don't be too hard on yourself. I often don't guide conversation well during our county commissioner meetings, and I've got loads of practice at it. I've been thinking a lot about the entities that want to get maybe join the RTA before we put it back on the ballot in 22. And it seems to me, and maybe Jennifer Ivey can correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems to me you've got, for those entities, municipal elections in 21, so April of 21, that's coming up fairly quick, or they could do off-cycle November elections in 21 as well and get that done. And it seems that, having a year to get it done is probably something that's workable. Getting it done in November of 21, so we could then have something complete to take to the voters in 22.
I think there's also April of 22. Jennifer, is that right? April of 22 for some.
Sure, that too. Yep.
Yep, that is correct. And Commissioner Waller, you're right on track with sort of what I discussed with Rick and the team. There's a lot of options before November 2022. Obviously, that would make our lives here at PPRTA a lot easier because we're not writing contingent ballot questions or deciding if we want to bifurcate it or how we want to deal with it. So it would definitely make things a lot more straightforward from our standpoint if all potential new members joined prior at any election prior to November 2022.
How
Of
many
which there-
entities are we talking about? Monument? Who else?
I will defer to Rick or anybody else to tell me who all the entities are. I know the ones I looked at were Monument. Oh wow, now I'm completely drawing a
Maybe
blank.
Palmer Lake?
Keller County.
Mr. Chairman,
I think Rick has yeah, I was gonna say, we were gonna discuss this later during the workshop, but if Rick, do you want to bring it up now?
yes, I think
Sorry.
a tentative list for the board to consider would be the 4 municipalities in El Paso County who are not in, plus Woodland Park. So that'd be Palmer Lake, Monument, Calhan, Fountain, and Woodland Park, those 5.
I visited with Monument and referred them off to Chairman Gonzalez and Vice Chair Geislinger. So they'll be looking at that with members of the board and with Rick. So they're interested because Berta was so conservatively closed. And so now that Berta's not out there, they're interested maybe.
Okay, thank you. Mark, anything else?
No, and I didn't mean to preempt a discussion later, but
Oh, that's okay. All right, anybody else have any comments? Okay, thank you, Jim. And do you have anything else to add, Jim?
I do not. Thank you for your time.
Okay, I believe we do need a motion to accept the monthly report.
Director Williams, Holly, I move to accept the monthly report.
Yolanda, second.
Okay, I have a motion and then a second from Yolanda. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Okay, that takes us to item 6, financial reports. Good news, Bev, I think.
Yes, another good month. In July, we received, or for July, we received 11,238,000, which is 1,926,000 ahead of the monthly budget, or 20.7%. And on page 2, compared to July of 2019, we're 1,032,000 over the actual of last year, or 10.1%. Our drives, which is the Department of Motor Vehicles, registration taxes, sales and use taxes, were really high for the month of July. And Councilman Geislinger said that the city's analysis pointed to mostly building materials being super high compared to last year. Are there any questions?
Any questions for Bev? Okay, hearing none. Seeing none, I'm just very happy that we're seeing these numbers continue. Okay, you have a second part, Bev?
Yes, well, the next item is the fiscal 2021 budget calendar and revenue estimate. And the budget calendar looks very similar to last year's. However, we do have an issue with item number 7, which is the board workshop on 11/11, and that day is Veterans Day. So we need to move that PPRTA meeting, the whole meeting, to a different day, and this would be a good time for the board to determine what day that would be.
And we were looking at our pre-meeting, if it was possible to do a meeting on the afternoon of the 12th, which would be just a day later. I think it's probably a good day for the county commissioners. So if we do have a meeting in the morning, normally doesn't go past noon on a Thursday. However, David did mention that the Colorado Springs Utilities has, I believe, subcommittee meetings, and so I'm not sure if either Director Williams or Yolanda have conflicts in their small meetings with CSU.
Yes, this is Yolanda. We totally have conflicts because we set those up all day Thursday and Friday, and we also have our board briefing with the CEO on those days.
Do you know if your afternoon, David's was free for the afternoon, but not the morning? Do you know if your meetings are in the morning or afternoon?
Afternoon.
Okay. How about you, Wayne?
Wayne's on the personnel committee. That's with me.
Yeah, but that's on Friday. So you're talking Thursday the 12th.
Yes.
Thursday the 12th. Is actually pretty good for me, so I could probably do either. Yolanda, do you have, I know personnel's on Friday. Do you have meetings on Thursday afternoon?
Yes, we have the PMR. I'm on the PMR committee, which we have the tour in the morning and the meeting in the afternoon.
Do you know what time's that meeting over?
4 o'clock. And I'm telling you that meeting will takes it completely out of me. It's pretty
Okay.
intense. 3-hour meeting.
Just a reminder that a quorum is 5.
And I was going to ask if Wayne and Yolanda are, well, except you're not good in the morning, right, Lohinos?
No, we'll have a commissioners board meetings. All 3 commissioners would have a couple hours worth of that.
Okay.
I can do the afternoon of the 12th, but I can't do that would be the best for me.
And I don't mean to presume anything, Yolanda, but would you be totally averse to maybe Richard or Don stepping in as an alternate on the 12th to get this scheduled?
Oh, no, I would be fine with that.
Okay. Why don't we go ahead and just tentative, we'll do it on the 12th. And I will check with Don or Richard to see if they can attend.
Well, I'd still like to check with the other directors. I mean,
True. I'm sorry.
yeah, we have a couple other municipalities. However, if we can get a majority of the city and the county, that would at the minimum get us a quorum. But any input from the other municipalities on whether the afternoon of the 12th of November would work?
This is Jane Newberry, Green Mountain Falls. That works fine for me.
Okay.
Yeah, this is John Graham, Manitou. That would be fine with me as well.
Okay. So it does look like that's the ideal, even if we do miss maybe 1 or 2 people. It's just the oddity of the holiday falling on our board meeting, and that's one of those holidays that we do the actual date of, not a Monday holiday. So, okay, we'll put that in as the change 2 at this point. Anything else, Bev? We do have to vote
The revenue
on
estimate for 2021, we have to establish that in order to start the budget process and give the member governments their allocations. This year we budgeted 102 million, and out of this year we're ahead 9 million compared to that, but about 3 million of that is catch-up revenue from last year, which is kind of unusually high. But I'd say conservatively, I'd like to recommend we budget 105 million for next year's sales and use tax due to the uncertainty of the economy, consumer confidence, and COVID stimulus money for next year. So I'm going to recommend 105 million, and the board should discuss that and let me know if they would like to have to change that.
Okay, we'll open that up to discussion right now. Anybody have any ideas other than 105, or if that sounds like a good number? I think you said, Bev, we were at 102 this year?
That is the budget, yes.
Okay. Any comments?
I would just say, I think as far as what we can guess for next year, that's as good a guess as any. And it may be low and it may be high, and we'll deal with it. So,
If it's low, that's never a problem because we just carry over the revenue. If it's high, then there's sometimes an issue. But that only happened once, and there was a little discomfort from that, but it was fine the following year, so we caught up.
and I think that if the dire prognostications come true, it's going to be uncomfortable for lots of reasons, and so we'll deal with that.
Anybody else? I kind of like it's right in the middle, 105. I kind of like that.
Before the board votes, could we agree on the time of the day on November 12th? Is it assumed that it would be 1:30?
I would recommend it the time that we normally do it at, which is 1:30, so it's less likely we would confuse each other. So unless anybody has a different recommendation, I would recommend our normal starting time, which is at 1:30.
1:30 is good for me.
Sounds good.
Loginos, that's a Thursday we're talking about?
Yep.
Yeah, I guess 1:30 is all right. I was just thinking if our meeting goes a little bit long, maybe we push it back, but I'll make sure.
Sure.
We're done at 1:30.
Normally our Thursdays don't go past lunch on, compared to the Tuesday meetings, but we've been getting caught on surprises lately.
Yeah, we're going to start adding all that land use stuff in. I'll just make sure we schedule late that day.
Okay.
Or just don't put Craig Dawsey on the agenda.
Yeah. Or anybody else.
So any other recommendations on 105, 106, 104? We do have to vote on this. So if there's no more comments, I do need a recommendation to approve setting the revenue estimate at 105 is what the current discussion is.
I'd move that Director Wayne Williams, I move that we set it at 105.
Director? All right.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. I'm not sure who seconded it. I'm going to give the credit to Commissioner Waller there. I think beat the other.
And also,
Wayne made the
how
motion.
about if this also covers the budget calendar approval with the change of the date to the Thursday, the 12th?
I so incorporated in the motion.
Okay, and that was seconded by Commissioner Waller. All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Okay, that passes. Thank you very much, Bev. Good news there. Item 7, 2020 capital maintenance and public transportation contracts. A, City of Colorado Springs capital projects line item transfers. Do we have Mike on?
Yes, good afternoon, Mike Chavez, City Engineering. The first item we have is a request to transfer some funds to start 4 projects which we have not funded previously. So we'd like to move money to start 8th Street improvements, the El Paso Road Bridge over Fountain Creek, I-25 ramps at South Nevada and Tejon, and the South Cheyenne Canyon Bridge over Cheyenne Creek. In addition, we're also requesting line item into a current project, the Galley Road over West Forkasang Creek Bridge. That's one of the ones we put some money into last year to start. We need a little bit more. And if you look at the table in the memo, it shows that we are transferring money from the Platte Avenue connection study because we are combining that with the Platte Avenue corridor study. And we feel that there's enough money in the corridor study to cover both. So we're moving $200,000 out of that project. And then the rest is coming out of the Barnes Road widening, which we had a decent amount of money left over because we got a really good bid last year. And so that's where we're taking the money from and then going into these various projects to start the design on them. So if there's any questions on that,
Move approval. This is Wayne Williams.
I'll second, Dave.
Okay, I have a motion, a second to approve. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. Okay, next item, I believe it's still Colorado Springs, item B.
yes. Okay, so first item we have is, so we did a line item transfer into the Galley Road Bridge. So that was because we have a change order for Stantec to do some, as part of their final design, we need to do some additional utility location and some test holes and a little bit of utility design in conjunction with what they find out in the field. There's just a higher requirement per state law that kicked in last year that we have to do a design on the utilities and get those located more precisely. Next item is we are reducing some RTA funding out of the Hewitt construction contract for the Southwest Downtown Pedestrian Bridge. We're supplementing that with some gift trust money that we got and some URA bonds. Now that reduction of RTA funds those funds will be used for other parts of the project, namely some geotechnical testing and some railroad costs, but we are still staying under the 4.6 million of RTA funds for the bridge project. Next item is we have a change order for Aecom to start the final design of the Academy Reconstruction projects. Those are two projects, two segments, but we've combined them for design at least. So the split between the two projects is shown in the cover sheet of the memos. And we're just working to get those designed, probably finish the design of the north section in early mid 2021, and then the south section will be a little bit later in 2021. Then we go out to bid with those two. Next item, we have a bridge maintenance item. We're going to be doing some rehabilitation to the Colorado Avenue Bridge that goes over Monument Creek and the railroad tracks. It's for 2.8 million, and we're going to do some selective removal of the deck to put concrete back to ensure adequate coverage over the rebar. And we're also going to top the deck with a 2-inch polyester concrete deck coating that we've been using in our bridges for longevity, and it's been a pretty good product. So that deck topping did raise the price up of the rehab a little bit, but we feel it's worth putting that on the bridge deck. Next item is another bridge maintenance item. It's the removal of the Cowpoke Bridge. So there's a large project there to put a water quality detention pond where the existing part of Cowpoke, it's an older section, the dirt section of Cowpoke. That's going to be removed, the bridge and the road, to put a water quality pond. This is kind of a project that's been put together with different funding sources. It's about a $4.6 million project, but we've got money from the developer, I believe it's Norwood. We've got some park and rec money for trails, and Stormwater's putting some money in. And our contribution is going to be $150,000 to remove the bridge, which is no longer going to be needed. And we felt that was a good deal because Tut is going to be extended, and there will be a culvert under Tut that replaces this Cowpoke Bridge. It'll be a new structure, which we won't have to do much work on for quite a while. And so this removal takes an old bridge off our inventory of maintenance. So it's kind of a partnership to get this whole project done. It's a pond, it extends Tut, grants access to some of those properties that were using the old Cowpoke Bridge. Next item is operations maintenance. Got a pipelining contract for lots of pipe. The memo shows the different locations where the pipe under the roads will be lined to extend their life. Then we have a request to move some RTA funds for the airport bridge over Spring Creek. We initially looked at relocating the sanitary line on the bridge and kind of looping it around the north side of the bridge, but and that was about $324,000 of RTA cost share to move that. But that option really wasn't working too well. It was kind of flat. So utilities would like to upgrade a substantial portion of their sanitary line from Academy down Airport Road and then down the golf course. That's I think it's several thousand feet of pipe. That's about a $4 million project, and what we're running that for them, and so we're gonna take the money that they've contributed already, and we're gonna add the RTA cost share. And what we're requesting is to be able to move that RTA cost share portion into a utility account we have, so that when we bid this project, or we actually are bidding the project, we can just have one account to draw to pay the contract. So that's kind of an efficiency item that we'd like to request that this be approved. Then the last item is just informational. We're adding $65,000 of non-RTA money to Wildcat's contract for the Wormhole Sierra Madre work.
Okay, any questions for Mike?
This is Yolanda. Mike, for the bridge over Airport Road at Spring Creek, what's the timeline? Is it still the same?
Yes, we need to get the sanitary line out of the way. We are looking at doing that work during this fall, and then when that's done, we can start on the bridge. And so sometime in the fall here soon, we will be bidding the actual bridge work, but we need to do this sanitary work first.
Okay, just went because I received a timeline for that a few months ago, and I just wanted to make sure it's the same.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else? Okay, hearing none, would anybody like to move these for approval?
Yolanda, move to approve.
Wayne, second.
Okay, any other comments? Hearing none, I have a motion and a second to approve. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed say nay. Okay, that passes. Next up, item 7C, El Paso County. Do we have Jennifer?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Board of Directors, Jennifer Irvin, El Paso County County Engineer. We have one item for your consideration today. We have a contract and purchase order with Pyramid Construction for approximately $2.5 million. And this is for doing both asphalt and concrete maintenance repairs located on roadways within the area of Falcon, specifically the Falcon Highlands area. So we have some significant safety issues out there with regard to movement of the concrete and asphalt, and we're going back in there and repairing that area. So this is over an approximately 6.5 mile area within the Falcon area. Happy to answer any questions in regards to this item.
Any questions for Jennifer? Hearing none, would anybody consider a motion to approve?
This is Dave. I'll move.
I'll second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second to approve. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Okay, that passes. Item 8, other reports. City of Colorado Springs Transit Services monthly update. Craig, are you online?
I am. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Great. Okay, Craig Blewett, Transit Services Manager with the City of Colorado Springs. Our report is in your packet. just quickly go through the highlights with our local fixed route bus service. Again, comparing this year to last year, it's been about a 50% decrease in ridership. But as the bar graph shows at the bottom of the page, we are making slow and steady progress in terms of increasing ridership on that system. On ADA paratransit, Metro Mobility, similar, we're down about 65%. That's actually come up some. And that's been also some steady increase in ridership. And I think I mentioned last month, but this is important, our contractor Transdev has brought back 9 of the 19 drivers who were furloughed earlier this year because of a reduced ridership. So they brought back almost half of the drivers that were furloughed. And if things keep increasing, they'll be bringing additional drivers back from furlough as well. Jumping ahead to Vanpool on page 4. Also a steady but slow increase on ridership with that program as more people are coming back to physically commuting back to work. Our project update really just updates on a couple things. One is the North Nevada Avenue Transit Connectivity Study, and that is progressing, and we expect to complete that here September, October, and we'll be going to City Council for an intermodal transportation plan amendment with that. And then the 2020 service changes, we did go ahead and approve the service change for Route 40, which would reduce the number of hours and days served to really match better the Pikes Peak Community College calendar. But we are holding off on actually implementing that. Pikes Peak Community College continues to not have in-person classes. And so that's going to be delayed until January 2021 at the earliest. And that's all I have, and I'd be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions for Craig?
Yeah, Commissioner Gonzalez, this is Dave. Craig, it's not anything that I expect an answer at this point, and I'm not even sure you can give an answer, but I'd be curious how the trends locally either are consistent with or inconsistent with the trends with other area transit systems and then nationally, just to see how we're doing in regards to this, because obviously COVID has had an impact on ridership everywhere. But for future presentations, I think that would be information I'd be interested in, would be helpful.
Sure, I can probably answer that in part today. You know, we've been participating in a lot of phone calls where transit agencies across the country are comparing notes. And being 50% down is about par for the course, I should say. RTD, I just read an article yesterday. Of course, RTD is in the news because of financial difficulties, but their ridership is down 60%. My understanding is the light rail ridership is down more than their bus ridership. Bus ridership tends to have more transit dependent and people who don't have the luxury of teleworking, whereas light rail is more teleworkers. But I can check a little bit more into that as well, Councilmember Geislinger, and try to give an update on that.
Actually, that was enough of a 40,000 foot view for me. So I'm not sure if other people are interested, but that's kind of the information that I was interested in. Thank you.
You bet.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you, Craig.
Thank you.
Item 8B, City of Colorado Springs Monthly Change Order Property Acquisition Report. Mike.
Sorry, I'm trying to unmute. Yeah, this is Mike Chavis. Is there any questions on this month's report?
Any questions for Mike? Okay, hearing none, I'll go to the next item. Quarterly reports from member governments.
This is Rick. I'll kick it off. It's
Rick.
the quarterly reports from the member governments of their accomplishments for the second calendar quarter of 2020. And I understand Gail Sturdivant would like to preview and highlight the new format for the city's quarterly report. So, Mr. Chairman, I'd suggest you recognize Gail Sturdivant from the city.
Okay, Gail, would you like to give us an update?
Absolutely. Jessica, could you screen share so I could put the presentation up, please? All right, it's still not working. All right.
Should work now.
All right, got it. Thank you. All right, you should all be seeing a PowerPoint presentation now. Please let me know if that's not the case.
Good.
All right, as Rick mentioned, my name is Gail Sturdivant. I joined the City of Colorado Springs as the City Engineer and Deputy Public Works Director in April of 2020. One of my initial tasks was to prepare an updated PPRTA quarterly report format. So the intent of today's presentation is just a short discussion to high-level some of the changes in formats, and then at the end, I will be available for questions. All right, here. So the updated format, the purpose is really to clarify previously provided information and augment the report with the different additional content. The general report format includes an executive summary focusing on completeness with the budget, overall budget and schedule of the capital projects and programs. We also are providing highlights for active capital projects, the capital programs, and maintenance programs. As I mentioned in the executive summary, the first piece starts off with completeness. And I'm going to focus right now just on the A-list capital projects. Of the city's 34 projects, 10 are currently completed as shown in the pie chart, and that's the blue section in that area. You can also see the number and percentage of the projects in construction, engineering, and future phases. There's a schedule ring on the outside of the pie chart that shows the current 10-year PPRTA authorization period. And I'm going to be revisiting this graphic later in my presentation to show the city's plan to complete the A-list projects. So budget outlook. Although the updated budget outlook is described in the report, I want to walk through the budget outlook table provided on page 8 to make sure the information provided is clear to the board members. The items with the green leaders are information that's been previously provided. They show the capital plan with the previous project cost, the original allocation or cost estimate at the time of the ballot initiative, and the change between the ballot initiative costs and the estimates that were done that we had prior to this quarter. During this quarter, the city completed a cost estimating review on all the ongoing and future A-list projects. The information highlighted with the red text and arrows in the column titled the revised total project cost column. Also highlighted in red is the total change from the original allocation from the ballot initiative and this updated cost estimate. And finally, that column on the far right shows the anticipated additional allocation needed to complete the projects. At the bottom of the budget outlook table, you can see both the conservative and optimistic revenue. The conservative revenue projections are based on the 2020 budget with a 3% growth increase per year for 2021 through 2024. This is actually consistent with what Beverly just recommended for setting the budget or the revenue projections for the 2021 year. The optimistic revenue start with the 2021 revenue at a 15% increase over the 2020 budget, and then increases for 3% for growth in 22, 23, and 24. That initial 15% was based on what Beverly reported from last month's revenue for our year-to-date, which was at the time 15% over what our budget area is. As you can see circled in red, the conservative projection results in a $5 million shortfall, and the optimistic projection results in $11.5 million in contingency or B-list funding. These two methodologies result in a $16.5 million range. Revenue projections, along with project costs, are going to be monitored closely and modified as appropriate as we go through the cycles. So now that we've done this, what does that mean moving forward? Ultimately, the updated project estimates are going to be sequenced to all projects to maximize delivery of the overall set of projects or program. You'll see schedule adjustments to advance projects to a high level of cost certainly earlier, such as the line item transfers that Mike presented previously. And then we'll be looking to start construction the years where funding is available. With this tool, it helps us identify the funding situation towards the end of the program and allows us time for planning and prioritization to deliver the overall PPRTA program. And as I mentioned, with conservative revenue projections, we are currently identifying a potential shortfall. So we need to continue to be diligent to fulfill our RTA commitments to voters. So we're implementing measures to make sure we meet this commitment as outlined in the report. To summarize, right now we think we have a pocket for more competitive pricing with our construction contractors and engineering consultants. We're going to continue to look for opportunities to leverage RTA funding to capture additional funding, whether it's through federal or state grants. And worst case, we could propose reductions to capital programs if needed in future years. Next, this next slide is not actually included in the report, but I thought it was important to show the pie charts over the last 4 years of the current RTA authorization to show the city's plan to complete the work. So as I mentioned previously, the blue is the completed projects, green are projects under construction, and red are projects still in engineering. So the top left chart represents the status at the end of 21, top right is at the end of 22, bottom left is the end of 23, and the bottom right is the end of 2024. Our intent is to have all the projects initiated by 2021. And by the end of the current authorization, 30 of the 34 projects, again, those shown in blue in the bottom right-hand corner, are anticipated to be complete, with 4 shown in green to be anticipated to be in construction. After the project completeness and the overall A-list budget and schedule narrative in the report, there are highlights for all the active A-list projects, the A-list capital programs, and the maintenance programs. Each project has a visual indicator showing the active phase in the project's life cycle. A description of the planned work is also provided along with project-specific budget information and current highlights. Each of the A-list capital programs is described and program spend and completeness is detailed. The spend history shows costs or expenditures from the past 3 years, along with the spend through the first and second quarter of 2022. Each of those programs also has highlight of completed activities, and most of them have planned activities identified as well. Similarly, there are maintenance programs that are described along with the program spend and completeness. And then again, with highlights provided of what's been completed and what activities are planned moving forward. So as I mentioned, my presentation was just really intended to provide a high-level overview of the new format. There's a lot more content in the report, and I want to thank you for your time, and I'm happy to take questions.
Any questions for Gail?
This is Dave. It's not a question, Gail, but a comment. I want to commend Travis, and I assume the city council auditors have been working with you guys on doing this as well.
Yes, in fact, we had an audit entrance meeting earlier today.
Because it was a little bit over a year ago that Travis and Denny and I talked about doing something like this, and I think it's very readable, and I commend you on that. The only question of substance, when we get to that pie chart on 2024 and the 4 projects that are under construction but not completed, is there going to be money from the current PPRTA in reserve to complete those projects?
The anticipation is yes. I mean,
okay.
With the intent of the ballot initiative, everything needs to be funded, and since we pay as we go, we've got to wait for some of those projects that are going to be in construction in that last year. and really anticipate that construction finishing in 25 or 26, depending on the size of the project. But the fundings are still with this
That it's
authorization.
going to be the funding that's going to be rolled over from the current PPRTA.
That is the intent. Everything is in that A list.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Let me just say that one of the things when I got on this board was trying to push to have a better process for explaining where we are in the projects. And I think this does a better job. And I very much appreciate folks working on this in a way. And, you know, the way the current RTA sets up, the last revenues don't show up, Bev, till what, February of 2025 from December 24 purchases?
Yes, that's correct.
So, you know, and that December purchase tends to be a fairly significant part of the sales tax revenue. And so the revenues, even were the RTA capital not renewed or it was devoted to other things, which it hopefully will be, that revenue is still coming in for a couple months, even after the end of 24, which is why we can't finish all of them by the calendar year because the revenue is not all in. But this does a much better job of explaining it and shows we are making progress and we have a plan to complete things. It's my hope that we can make a little more progress if revenues continue to exceed our budget and we can get a few more bids like we had last month where we were, what, $1 million under an engineer's estimate. So hopefully we can actually get some B work done. But thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you very much. Let's see. Next item I have is, oh, well, any other quarterly reports, Rick?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Then item 9, administrative actions and reports for PPRTA 3 workshop.
If I might, this is Rick, if I might start off, let me suggest a 3-step process here. Number 1 is to hear from your board attorney, Jennifer Ivey, on at least the topic of weighted voting and any other legal issues she wants to share with you. Number 2 is then the board to comment on the CAC's 2 recommendations and their 2 study items. And then the third dimension would be anything else the board would like to discuss on the PPRT 3 topic workshop list.
Okay, Jennifer, do you have comments for us?
Yeah, so these are not very satisfying comments, but we spent quite a bit of time trying to chase down the question of whether weighted voting is permissible or not under the statutes. And the RTA law doesn't speak to whether it is or not allowed. It doesn't prohibit it. It also doesn't allow for it. So then we broadened our search to case law and other statutes. And interestingly, there's really not a lot of advice under Colorado law on whether weighted voting is permissible or not. So this is, as I said, a sort of highly unsatisfactory legal answer in that the answer is, I don't know what the answer is. I am aware of at least one other authority, a public highway authority in the state of Colorado, that did allow for weighted voting in their establishing contract under certain circumstances. I don't know how many times that weighted voting has actually been exercised in practice. I don't think very many, if any, at all. So if this is something the board would like to pursue further, I think my next steps or recommendations would be that I would really want to talk to the member government's attorneys as well, since it would require an revision to the establishing IGA to see what their thoughts and level of comfort with the idea of weighted voting would be, since we obviously wouldn't want to amend the establishing contract in a way that any of the member governments thought was not permissible. So like I said, not a very satisfying answer.
Well, does anybody have any questions on that topic for Jennifer?
Got one question.
Go ahead.
And it's been a long time since I've been on the PPACG board, but it seems like there was some process where a type of weighted voting can take place on PPACG's board, or maybe it's just certain entities get to vote on certain items. It's a relic from when we used to have two separate parts of the PPACG board, I remember.
And I would defer to Andrew or Rick on whether that's permissible or not, since I'm not the PPACG attorney. I guess my only comment would be it might be permissible. Obviously, there's sort of this quasi governmental agency. I mean, they're a sort of undefined MPO type entity that isn't confined by some of the same laws that are applicable to a bona fide, if you will, political subdivision of the state of Colorado.
Yeah, it wasn't so much to establish the legal precedent as to say if we've done it in the region before, that might be a factor that might be relevant. So I don't know, Rick, if you can just check and see. It's been a while for me.
Well, and Wayne, I'm happy to chime in there. That on the PPACG side, we really don't have weighted voting, but we do have a distinction, but we haven't really used this either to vote between the MPO jurisdictions that are part of the urbanized area, where we actually have some control over the federal transportation funds that flow to the region through the tip, versus the entire COG area, which is a larger membership. It's, I think, 9 jurisdictions within the MPO area versus 16 that are part of all of PPACG. But we don't actually, to be honest with you, in practice, actually break out our votes that way on the PPACG action items. But weighted voting, I think it's been discussed a little bit in the past on the PPACG side, but we don't have that in place within the bylaws.
Okay, just for the historical part, Andy, I know this was before you got there. We used to have 2 separate board meetings, each board, where we split it up. And this is what happened when we combined it. We gave an entity the right to ask for it. But yeah, practically it almost never occurs. Yeah. So, okay, I wasn't sure if it was weighted or not. Thanks.
And the other, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, Jennifer, I think it's a really good idea, but maybe not right now, to talk to the member jurisdictions. I know we are going to be reaching out to other jurisdictions to figure out what they want. We are having at the city council mayor get together in a little bit over a week, a discussion about what PPRTA 3 would look like. I think that this is a potential tool to put in a new and bigger and better toolbox, or different toolbox. But I think it might be premature to have that conversation, at least right now. I think ultimately it's something that's going to happen if we're going to pursue something along these lines.
Okay, I will stand by on that then and wait for further direction. As I said, I was very unsatisfied with the answer myself, but unfortunately that's the answer I found. The other thing I think that would be worth noting, Rick and I had some correspondence back and forth on sort of, what is required for a ballot question. Obviously, we've used the paradigm of, shall taxes be continued for the capital portion, and the A and B list, and with the A being completed before the B. And so Rick asked me the very simple question of, sort of what actually is required. I think as some of you probably know, what is required is the shall taxes be continued, or whatever language we've used in the past, for capital improvements. There is no requirement for the A and B lists. I mean, that's something that, has worked. It's sort of part of the promises made, promises kept that the PPRTA has used in the past. But that doesn't mean it's legally required that we list out what those projects will be, that we have an A list, that we have a B list, that we have a C list. None of that is required. There's no requirement that A has to be done before B, that we can't have switching between A and B. I mean, there's a plethora of different ways we could, if you will, take many colors out of the crayon box and change how that ballot question looks. From a Tabor perspective, we have to make sure that we're asking if those taxes can be continued and what those taxes will be spent on. But the level of specificity of what those taxes will be spent on does not have to be down to the minutia of A, B, C, as we have in the past lists. It can be very broad and could be for regional capital improvements or something like that.
This is Rick, if I might jump in. I think the specific question was, could we have an A and B list and at the end a phrase that says, and a number of other undefined capital projects that the board wants to add from time to time.
Yeah.
So it was that phrase at the end that I think a board member or a CAC member asked me that I asked Jennifer. So so the answer is the board could add such a phrase at the end of the AB list that says, and other capital projects that the board wants to add from time to time. It's just whether or not you want to have that vagueness that might or might not harm or hurt the passage percentage.
Yep, that is exactly it. Thank you for the clarification, Rick. Yeah, I mean, there really is, as I said, this is one of these areas where we have any number of colors in the crayon box where we can choose if it's just going to be an A list. Are we going to have an A, B, C, D list? Are we going to have the A and B? Are we going to add a phrase at the end that gives the board just, by board direction and the addition? Is it a super majority of the board that has to vote to approve something to add it to the list? I'm just, obviously spitballing off the top of my head. There's any number of ways that could be revised. I think those are the only two things. Rick, correct me if I'm forgetting something, but those were the two major things I had written down in my notes that we sort of had some back and forth on between meetings.
Rick, anything else? Did she miss it?
I'm checking my notes. I think, Jennifer, there was one about could a new member join midstream? Because currently, if they join midstream, they cannot get capital, maintenance only. But the question was, could a new member join midstream and get capital?
Right. Thank you.
I think I think your answer was no.
No, under the current paradigm, because if they joined in 2021, let's say, the current capital projects list wouldn't have any capital projects approved for those member governments. So we would, in essence, have to do what we did for the GAP project, which was go out to the voters and add a project for new member X in order for them to have a project on the list for which they could use their capital money. Now, if we're recreating the paradigm in 2022, and the question is, could a member join midstream in 2023, let's say, and at that point have a new project, if we had some language like Rick suggested at the end, and whatever new projects might be added by the board from time to time, then assuming that we also had the IGA amended accordingly, yes.
Or if there's no list at all.
Or if there's no list at all, right.
Okay.
But in the sort of midstream 2021, the way we have things structured now, the answer would be no. Without any changes or new PPRTA ballot questions, we couldn't add somebody now and have them receive capital money with just an IGA change.
Okay. Anything else to add on that, Rick? What was our second part?
Any comments or discussion about the CAC's 2 recommendations and 2 study items?
Okay. Any of the directors have any questions or comments, ideas? I don't hear any. Do we have to
Well, it looked like Geislinger was trying to weigh in, but maybe.
I was just going to say, I think that the consensus of trying to get this to 2022 is pretty uniform.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we ought to at least plan on that.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
so that's all I've heard from any of the directors over the last several months was that that makes the most sense, and so I concur that that should be kind of the going forward idea. What was the other recommendation, Rick, from the CAC?
To have an A and a B list, that the A is like we've done in
Right.
PPRTA 2, the A is deemed to be a priority list, not necessarily in priority, but it's a priority group to tell the public that we intend to do the A group first before the B.
And I believe that, again, I've heard most, not quite as uniform, but pretty much a consensus of that was the best idea moving forward to keep the confidence with the constituents and residents of the member governments, with the side question on can something be moved from the B list to the A list midstream, pending other reasons of like federal funding or grants. But what I had heard had been a general consensus to have both an A and B item to maintain that confidence with the residents. So I would recommend moving that forward as well.
Yeah, I think it needs to be pretty simple. I'm fine with A and B as long as there's flexibility.
And I concur 100% with Mark. The other thing that I would say is we ought to communicate that to Travis and Jennifer, and then the other jurisdictions, appropriate people, so that early on they can identify what the A and B lists are, and really be able to define them for the ballot going forward.
Is there anybody who doesn't agree with either one of those last two recommendations that have been brought up? Okay, I think we do have a consensus on that. Rick, anything else on that topic?
Just a wide open discussion if any board member wants to bring up anything that's on the list.
Okay, anything else for the workshop of PPRTA 3 from any of the member directors, and then I'll comment about the ideas. Mark brought it up earlier, or if Mark wants to continue the discussion on who we might want to meet with to discuss potentially adding either midstream or in the next iteration.
Well, one more thing, I guess, before we get to that, and I don't have the historical frame of reference to understand how 1 and 2 were done, but when are the conversations going to really start in earnest over what the lists look like, what the strategy is going to be moving forward, things of that nature? Like, how far back do we really need to be starting? Is this going to start the first of next year? Is it mid next year? What does that look like? Jennifer, do you know that?
Sorry, the unmute button is really hard to find. Yeah, so really, the discussion portion about the lists and all of that, I mean, I think that takes about, and Rick, you know the timing better than I do on how long it takes to get all of that together, because I'm not a party to all those discussions, but I think the timing on that is almost about a year in process, plus or minus a bit. The real hard deadlines from a legal standpoint for me start in July of 2022, which is when I would start working with the county to make sure we're on their radar to do a coordinated election for November 2022. And then ballot certification is usually right before or after, depending on when Labor Day hits. It's right near the beginning of September. So the ballot really needs to be finalized by September of 2022, early September. It's always right before your September meeting. So it's really the August meeting, unless the board wants to have a special meeting. which means, you know, that the lists have to be ready to be imported well in advance of that, so I can have discussions with the board about what the language of the ballot will look like. We've had some discussions centered around the past elections on interpretations of Tabor. So really, I think by June, July, we need to have a pretty good idea of what those lists are and be talking about what the ballot language is going to look like, so a final ballot can be presented to the board in August of 2022. So that means spring of 2021, the planning really needs to be underway to get those project lists together, from what I understand from Rick on timing in the past.
Perfect.
If I might ask Jennifer Irvin or Gail or Victoria or Mike Chavez to address when they're starting on their capital list, and they could be starting now.
I can start answering it. This is Gail Sturdivant with the City of Colorado Springs. We're beginning to start that process now, really developing or laying out the business cases that we're going to be used to select these projects and bring forth. And that's going to continue to evolve between now and the end of next year. And then we'll be doing the weighted score and bringing that forward for our members to consider.
Is Jennifer Urban there? Do you want to comment about how much time you think you'll need if we move forward wanting two lists, an A and a B list?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. We are developing a schedule as we speak, but we've already started identifying projects for our lists. But we went through an entire process last time where we, made a huge long list of projects. We went through a scoring procedure internally. We received public comment through our Highway Advisory Committee. We received input from our El Paso County Board of County Commissioners. And so what we're doing right now is developing and pinning down that schedule. I believe if I look at the previous PPRTA extension, we actually took a resolution to our Board of County Commissioners in May of 2012 with a final list, and then brought that forward to the next PPRTA board hearing. And so, but there was a lot of interjurisdictional coordination on that time and during that time, and we feel like that's a similar plan that we're going to follow, but also make sure that we're coordinating with all the other jurisdictions. So it is a significant effort to go through, but we feel like we can successfully do that and have a list May of 2022 or earlier.
Okay. I think that sounds good. I think look like they're already getting started on some of that. Any last comments on? So then moving forward in terms of new potential members, we did have a discussion. Was it a week and a half ago now, Rick, with Director Geislinger, myself, Rick, I believe Andy, and another person to discuss some of these. There were, Rick has already mentioned the 4 non-current municipalities in El Paso County as potentials, as well as Woodland Park. There was some discussion on. Yes.
I don't know if you saw in the chat, there's a couple of hands on the topics that we're already discussing. So
I'm sorry about that. Wayne, would you like to finish up?
Okay. 2 things. First, on weighted voting, I sent Rick and Andy a note from DRCOG's handbook where they reference it. So if you can get what DRCOG uses, that would be helpful, at least to give us some ideas as we go forward. And you should have an email from me on that. Second, with respect to the timeline, Jennifer's correct, that August meeting is that deadline. We don't have to wait till then. And to the extent we begin getting public support for it, we may not want to wait till the absolute end, or we at least want to have something we can take to people, because there's the governmental part of it, and then there's also the practical political side point, which is And I think Jennifer from the county mentioned part of this, which is, it's getting the stakeholder groups involved. It's making sure that there is support for that, which is something both the city and county are going to be doing. But it's also working with who may be willing to fund a campaign. That's the unofficial part of it, but that's something that has to be taking place at the same time, because it's not just putting it on the ballot, it's also making sure that there is sufficient support. And that's not something we can use official means for, but it is something that many of us will want to be engaged in. If you look at the first Pikes Peak RTA process, since Mark asked about that, it was a much longer process. It was a couple years. But in that case, you were putting something on for the very first time. It was a very complex issue. The renewal was less of an issue because it had functioned so well. So I just wanted to give that in terms of background. And I think Dave's got his hand up too.
Dave?
Yeah, and I'm going to preface, I'm going to have to leave in 6 minutes. So I'm going to preface what you're about to talk to, because it's the same thing, or it's related. The first thing I would say is that Travis, I know, has been at least informally putting the list together. So I would expect that Travis, I think he's been doing it, whether intentionally or just passively with Jennifer. They've been in conversation, so I would expect that at least El Paso County and Colorado Springs will be able to identify the A-list items going forward relatively soon in principle, but then you got to do the process of how much it's going to cost, timelines and things for that to be completed. But that's already in the process. I think from the city standpoint, it's probably a good idea. Just a second. I'm going to have to call you right back. I'm sorry, I'll call you right back. That's the message that I was waiting for, and I was hoping to get done beforehand. We are meeting on the 18th to have the city, the mayor, city council retreat, and that's really where I think the first real efforts of sitting down from the city standpoint of what PPRTA 3 needs to look at and all that is going to be is going to start to be fleshed out from the political side of things. So it was because of that, to anticipate what Lojinos is going to get into. It's after that I think the city, from the city standpoint, we're going to be in a better position to go out to these other jurisdictions, to talk about what they want, to have them talk to us about what they would want if they would want to come into PPRTA 3 on this cycle, or even down the road what they'd be looking for in an IGA if they're not ready to do it now, but in 2027 if they want to come in. So I think that in regards to the sorts of things that Jennifer was just talking about, I think we're going to be in a position to be able to do that going forward. And I apologize that I do have to leave. So enjoy the rest of the discussion.
All right, thanks, Dave. Okay, and so just moving onto that discussion was, we did have some dialogue talking about what could potentially be new members. The one discussion we did focus on as part of that was how far do we expand that radius, and what do we consider a reasonable addition if those members or if there's municipalities or governments wanted to participate. And we did not think of the members who were talking, think that beyond Woodland Park made any sense. There were some discussions of municipalities further west than that, but we thought to keep it more local, an entity no further than Woodland Park made the most sense. Again, that doesn't mean we couldn't expand that if other directors wanted to pursue that. But that was the initial discussion, and the municipalities reaching out, having staff reach out to them and see if they had any belief that they would look into that, have any ideas whether they were positive, but if they were, what they would have to do in the year or so before taking the PPRTA 3 vote, because there probably are some prerequisites that they would have to do to be able to participate from the start of PPRTA 3, or if they wanted to join us as an interim before PPRTA 3 were to begin, make sure they understood what would have to go on their own ballots going forward. So that was the initial discussions. I don't know if Rick, you wanted to add anything there, and then we can just open it up to general discussion.
No, I think you covered it. It's Palmer Lake, Monument, Callahan, Fountain, and Woodland Park.
And were there any discussions? I don't know if anybody has been contacted by any municipalities. Nobody has really brought this up to me from like say Fountain or any other municipalities. But again, we just want to get the word out to them. If they do want to pursue that there would be some things they have to accomplish before that 2020 or when PPRTA 3 would begin. So any general discussions from directors?
Hey, real quick, Lohians. Rick, I got Palmer Lake, Monument, Callahan, Fountain, and what was the last one? Woodland Park?
Yes, those 5.
Okay.
So this is Holly Williams. I'm back. I would, I'll have Wayne update me and then I'll touch base with Monument to see.
Yeah, I've had, Holly, I have had some discussions with Don Wilson as well. I know they're very interested.
All right.
Okay, anybody else?
This is Jim, I'm back. I would assume that the CAC has no role in this at this point, and we don't really see much of a role in this negotiation process at all, and would just support whatever you guys want us to do.
Okay. All right, would that sound like there's any more discussion? And Rick, do we need any type of recommendation? I believe our idea was to have staff reach out to them, but it sounds like we also have a couple of directors who are willing to work with 1 or 2 municipalities directly.
Yes, staff will reach out. I think the plan is to wait until after the September 18 City Council and Mayor workshop, and then reach out to the 5.
Okay. I think that sounds like a good idea. All right, any other comment on this issue before we go to member announcements? Okay, seeing none. Item 10, PPRTA member announcements. Do we have any announcements from our member governments? Okay, hearing none. Item 11, adjournment. Sounds like approval. Anybody want to make a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn, Yolanda.
We have a motion from everybody and a second from everybody. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed, say nay. All right, that passes. Thanks, everybody. Have a great afternoon and enjoy the cold, the snow.
Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you. Take care.